First and foremost, I was just wanted to say my gratitude and thank you for inviting me because this is the first time I'm coming to all the way to Belgavi, and I personally thank Advocate Marutu Jalali sir and the ACPR whole team wholeheartedly, and I would like to say my thank you to my two gurus also there. One is Professor Bhima Kumar sir and Professor SK Maharana sir also there. They are continuously, supporting me because I have been joined in Allahabad Central University 2 years ago. This is I'm very newly, stepping into the world. And first and foremost, one more thing. I'll start. I'll not take much time because this is I wanted to say. This is a centenary celebrations of Professor Gurudev R.D. Ranades, but the legacy has to continue for 100 more years. The bridge between the older generation to the younger generation, the middle generation should be, contribute to the pass over this knowledge or experience from this generation to that generation. I wish the younger generation who are sitting in the like in the hall, they should at least learn, even though that may be very new topic. Philosophy, I know this is something which is everybody looks something abstract, something like people will think whenever you say I'm from philosophy, then I think okay, he's okay, we can't discuss with them because, or otherwise let's not talk, let's talk something which is, very, easily get income kind of a thing source. So nowadays we're all, market oriented, corporated oriented. So I wish this legacy should continue for forever because only thing which persists in humankind, that is passing the knowledge from one generation to the other generation. Thank you. And with this, I would like to just start my talk. Actually, my paper, which is a comparative study, like comparative philosophy and religion. I'm doing comparative study between Gurudev Ranade's philosophy, as well as there is a famous philosopher from German. His name is Immanuel Kant, very well known in Western philosophy, and very already most of them were touched upon what he wanted to do. And my perspective to start this paper, mostly my point of view will be from epistemological perspective to form what kind of theory of knowledge can be persisted, because we can know in Western philosophy in the age of 18th century, one of the pioneer of this philosophy, modern Western philosophy, that is Immanuel Kant, actually made a Copernican revolution which is there in philosophy, because Copernican revolution which is there in physics, which was equivalent same kind of revolution he had taken into the philosophy, that is making our human into the main, our mind should be the center of this or subject, and the world will be referral to that. So mind should be the center of this world and how to look at any object. That is his point of view that changed the whole philosophy later on. To start with, this paper explores the philosophical intersection between Immanuel Kant's critical philosophy and Gurudev R.D. Ranade's evolutionary mysticism. I've been learning, just listening last 2 days. This is word called mysticism. Whenever we heard this word mysticism, people tend to believe that mystic something which is unknowable. Something which is we no need to describe, or we no need to able to understand such kind of words. So, but whenever you wanted to make something unknowable to the knowable, so I think Professor Gurudev Ranade's main contribution to the philosophical pursuit, that to know the unknown, that is the most important. So how you know the unknown, that is we will just I wanted to explore that point of view in my paper. So while Kant famously established limits of human reason within the realm of possible experience, that is phenomena, and Professor Gurudev Ranade argues that the noumena is not merely theoretical postulate but a state of consciousness achievable through intuitive experience. By analyzing Kant's critique of pure reason alongside Professor Ranade's constructive survey of Upanishad philosophy, this study seeks to determine if Gurudev mystical intuition can be viewed as bridge across Kantian the great divide, because Immanuel Kant has divided this whole world into two different realms. one is nomina, another is phenomena. Whereas nomina, we cannot go. Our mind has some limitation. So we cannot know that nominal world or nominal realm. Whereas phenomena, only we can get to know. His whole philosophy can be summarized or in a put into a nutshell that with our mind is the most important there. Having any object, to know the experience of that object, you need to go through your mind within some space and time with 12 categories of understanding. So these 12 categories of understanding only can make any object to your experience. This is Kant's a nutshell. Whereas Professor Ranade's contribution also in this view that he wanted to pursue this through his intuitive knowledge or intuitive that experience called as anubhava. So the tension between what we can know and what exists beyond our senses foundational problem in metaphysics. So Kant has revolutionized Western thought by asserting that our knowledge is confined to the sensible world. Conversely, our Gurudev actually posited that the ultimate reality, Brahman, is sensible to the soul even if it is hidden from the intellect. And this paper investigates whether the concept of intuition, which is anubhava, provides a legitimate epistemological answer to Kant thing in itself, that is nomina. And I have explored three main important points of Kant's epistemological boundary, which is distinction between nomina and phenomena, and there is a sensibility barrier, and the last one, which is role of faith. Actually, Kant has written three main books, which is one is critique of pure reason, one is critique of practical reason, and critique of judgment. These three books actually to be monumental work in Western philosophy, because if you wanted to understand Western philosophy after this two schools, there are two schools which were ruled in 17th century, namely empiricism and rationalism. Later, Kant has reconciled these two schools into a critical philosophy, and that critical philosophy has started with doing this three books. In the last book, he came for the judgment and he has explained what is the nature of this aesthetic experience. And whereas I wanted to throw a light upon our Ranade's, Professor Ranade, Gurudev Ranade's evolutionary mysticism, where it deeply influenced by both Greek philosophy and the Upanishads, did not see the unknowable as a dead end. He proposed that human consciousness is capable of evolving towards a direct perception of the divine. And he has used intuition as a faculty. And Professor Gurudev argues that beyond the senses and the intellect lied a third faculty, that intuition. This is not an irrational feeling but a super sensuous perception that is an objective to the mystic as physical object to a scientist. And he also said that the verification of God, how can we do? And Ranade wanted to see this to treat the mysticism as a science, and suggested that if several individuals across different times and cultures experience the same self-realization, it constitutes empirical proof of reality beyond the sensibles. And there is one more of what is this methodology of the super sensuous and the source of experience in Gurudev Ranade's mysticism. Ranade's system demands a radical remapping of origin of knowledge, especially when compared to the Kantian framework. In Kant's system, objective knowledge arises from peripheral initiation based on the sense data receiving in the brain. But whereas Gurudev's mystical epistemology, by contrast, is rooted in central initiation. The mystical experience is generated internally due to the activation of specific brain centers by spiritual energy produced through the meditative practice and spiritual devotion. And this internal activation cultivates a distinct faculty, which is intuition. And intuition is a defined faculty of supersensuous experience across specifically by proper spiritual initiation and practice. While the resulting spiritual experiences may superficially resemble sensory experiences, Gurudev insists that they are fundamentally supersensuous. They transcend the limitations of sense organ, are non-spatial and non-temporal, thus making the apprehension of ultimate reality possible. Gurudev Ranade's reliance on the non-dualistic philosophy of Advaita Vedanta implies a fundamental critique of the Kantian cognitive structure. If the reality is self evident and prior to duality, as the ideas of Sant Dhaneshwar suggests, then it is inherently antedates and it distincts from the dualistic divisions into knower and the known, subject and object dichotomy. This realization necessitates that methods of thought such as Kantian epistemological analysis while relying on imposing categories of understanding onto sensible intuitions, and it cannot be applied into ultimate reality itself. The system of knowledge must shift from one imposed external structure to one of direct internal apprehension. And how we'll get to note this process of realization? He suggests a methodology that is asymptomatic approximation, which he clarifies that the God realization is not a singular instantaneous event, but rather a gradual and progressive process. He famously termed this trajectory asymptomatic approximation. Mathematically, an asymptomatic curve approaches a line infinitely without ever touching it. Gurudev uses this term to suggest that the devotee on their spiritual pathways comes closer and closer to God. And this terminology carries profound philosophical weight. While the mystical experience itself is characterized as a direct and immediate, the use of asymptomatic may acknowledge the permanent limitation of human intellectual articulation in fully grasping the infinite. It is a defense of the mystic's claim against rational critics, indicating that while the experience is verifiable and the real, the intellectual process of fully comprehending and articulating the absolute remains an infinite endeavor. Further, Professor Gurudev Ranade emphasizes that essential moral foundation, insisting upon the inseparability of spiritual life from the strict morality. Because the more in even in the Kantian philosophy also, Kant suggests that when human reasons cannot function in the morality in rest wherever you wanted to use it, same as Gurudev Ranade also suggests that in morality also you can attain the spiritual life and moral life together. You have to attain. You cannot be distinct one from the another. So the moral bridge, I just wanted to focus more on this. The moral bridge. So Professor Ranade's admirations of Kant's practical reason. Ranade's high regard of Kant's moral philosophy is a critical component of his synthesis. He accepts that foundational importance of morality and spiritual practice, thus a sadhana, emphasizing the inseparability of spiritual life from ethical action. This aligns perfectly within the Kant's framework where the moral law, which is categorical imperative in Kant, serves the primary rationale for postulating the supersensible, which is God. By embracing Kant's moral structure, Ranade accepts the necessity of supersensible reality mandated by ethical duty. The Ranade's philosophical view is to provide empirical evidence, that is mystical realization, that fills the void of knowledge left open by Kant's moral postulates. So Ranade's framework suggests that spiritual realization begins precisely where Kant's practical reasons end. The essence of Gurudev's constructive criticism lies in his profound understanding of limitations Kant imposed. Instead of merely attacking Kant's critical limits, Gurudev attempts to complete the system by introducing the requisite experiential faculty. He sought to populate the postulation of the morality by Kant is a necessary realm of the noumena with certain knowledge derived from the experience rather than necessary faith. So the conversion between these two philosophers, I wanted to give it in my conclusion. To proceed further towards my conclusion, this paper analyzes the analysis between these two different philosophers of different timelines reveals a critical juncture in epistemology, the inherent tension between the limits of sensible experience and the claims of supersensuous realization. Kant's critical philosophy established an undeniable limit on the theoretical knowledge, confirming that understanding cannot intellectually grasp the things in themselves, that is, noumena. However, Gurudev, through his system of rational mysticism, provides a structured, coherent, and rationalized methodology, that is the transcendental leap that successfully defines an alternative epistemic pathway to nominal reality. Gurudev's success in reconciling sensible limitation with mystical realization is not based on rejecting Kant's critique outright, but rather on the strategic completion. He accepts Kant's conclusion regarding the failure of intellect, but introduces the validated faculty of non-sensory intuition derived from internal spiritual practice. Furthermore, by deliberating leverage in Kant's criteria of universality and necessity, Gurudev provides an objective framework for what is otherwise most subjective to the experience, thereby moving the status of the supersensible from mere necessary postulates of faith to matter of verifiable knowledge, that is jnana. Thank you.